Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 22nd, 2020 regular meeting of the Westchester Board of Trustees. Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Yeah, Mrs. Becker?
Present.
Mr. Wong?
Present.
Mr. Welch?
Here.
Let's stand and face the flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We are at our first citizens' comments portion tonight, and we did have one resident signed up, but is deferring till second citizens' comments. And we don't have any presentations tonight, so we'll move forward with our action items. We have a couple sets of meeting minutes to vote on this evening, so I'll entertain a motion to approve trustee meeting minutes for June 2nd, 2020.
So move. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Yeah, Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes. I'll entertain a motion to approve trustee meeting minutes for June 9th, 2020.
I so move. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve special meeting minutes for June 10th, 2020.
So move. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve payment of bills.
I so move. I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes. Mr. Burks, requisitions greater than $7,500.
Yes, we have one requisition this week. It's for Frost Brown Todd LLC in the amount of $31,228.23 for legal services through May 31st, 2020 in various departments.
Thank you, Mr. Burks. I'll entertain a motion to approve requisition item number 1.
I so move. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Burks, personnel items. Item 2 is for the administration.
Yes, motion to hire Mr. Daniel Almer to the position of System Administrator, Township Network, effective June 29th, 2020, at the annual salary of $188.80 with a one-year probationary period. Mr. Almer previously worked for Westchester Information Technology for 18 years. This was from 2002 to 2020, and will be filling the vacancy created by his departure in April. Since departing in April for a position with another local government, Mr. Almer has reached out to Westchester staff consistently to assist during the transition of hiring a new employee. Mr. Almer's dedication to Westchester was strengthened during this time, and he felt compelled to return to his former position with the township. During Mr. Almer's absence, IT interviewed 9 applicants. 1 applicant declined a conditional offer of employment, and 1 candidate failed to meet the requirements during the hiring process, and the vacancy was scheduled to be re-advertised. Throughout his brief employment separation, Mr. Almer has shown his dedication to Westchester and desire to continue his support for township operations. I, for one, I am very glad Mr. Almer is back. His effective date of hiring will be June 29th, 2020.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion to approve item 2, the hiring of Dan Almer.
So move. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Dan's here. Dan, thank you for coming back.
Dennis missed you. Any other discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mr. Burks, item 3, police.
Yes, motion to hire Mrs. Angela Marie Sosa to the position of police technician, body-worn camera coordinator, effective June 29th, 2020, at the hourly rate of $20.39 with a 90-day introductory period. Mrs. Sosa has been a valued employee since 2018 in the police department records section. She has a combined 5 years of experience with public records. Mrs. Sosa has proven work ethic to be accurate, efficient, and conscientious. She holds a bachelor's degree in visual communications from Ohio University. Mrs. Sosa brings a wide array of experience to the position and has shown enthusiasm to learn all aspects of this new role within the police department. I think she's here. Hello. And then, if I'm not mistaken, you've been doing the position in transition as well, correct? All right. All right.
Wonderful. I'll entertain a motion to approve item 3, the hiring of Angie Sosa.
I so move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No. Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Yeah, Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes. Mr. Burks, item 4, services.
Yes, motion to hire 2 seasonal employees, Mr. Christian Dishler, effective June 15th, 2020 in roads, and Mr. Ethan Howard, effective June 15, 2020 in parks, both at the hourly rate of $12 an hour.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion to approve item 4.
Also move.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
This will bring our complement of seasonal labor positions filled to 7, and we're authorized up to 15.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Yeah, Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Burks, business items. Item 5 is for administration.
Yes, the next 2 resolutions, items 5 and 6, are designed to begin the process to place police and fire levies on the ballot in November. In 2006, the voters of Westchester approved a 6 mil fire and EMS levy, and in 2010, the residents of Westchester approved a continuous 7 mil police levy, which was projected to provide sufficient funding for at least 5 years. Through conservative spending and conscientious budgeting, the fire and police departments have been able to extend the life of these levies well beyond the expected time frame. Some of the conservation efforts put forth by the departments to keep costs low were fleet reduction, eliminated positions and not filling open positions, kept wages in check, use of grants, retire-rehire programs, and other efforts. In the years since the levy was approved, the population of Westchester Township has grown and businesses have continued to invest. Despite the residential and commercial growth of the township, the police and fire departments have continued to provide exceptional service without an increase in collection or cost to the taxpayers. But unfortunately, this is no longer sustainable. These levies will only maintain the high level of emergency services to which the residents and businesses have become accustomed, not to provide additional services or increase personnel. On June 9th, 2020, the Board of Trustees endorsed proceeding with a replacement levy based on the information presented at the work session. These are the first required statutory resolutions declaring the necessity of levying an additional taxes in excess of the 10 mil limitation. A second required resolution drafting the actual ballot language and certifying it to the Board of Elections will need to be approved in July to meet the board elections deadline.
Very good. So we have two resolutions that we need to pass. I'll start with number 15, which is for fire. I'll entertain a motion to approve statutory resolution number 15-2020.
I so move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, you know, I think that, I'd like to give all of my comments for the next 2 because they're both, you know, levies. Yeah, they're similar. And I just want to say that expenses go up, costs go up. The township has done a great job with the police and fire under the leadership of Chief Prenz and Chief Herzog over the years to keep the costs low by doing what any business would do, and that is reducing costs, right-sizing the personnel department, and doing all those things necessary in order to make these levies last as long as they did. And as we previously said, the fire levy last passed was 2006, and the police levy was 2010. So as part of my research, what I did is I went back. Basically what we're doing, we're paying for 2020 expenses with 2006 and 2010 dollars. So there is I found a cumulative inflation calculator online.
Very good.
And there,
Your black ink cartridge is down.
I know, I just bought a new printer, it hasn't arrived yet.
Sorry.
But I promise that after this, it'll be prettier again. But this is calculating, if you had $100 in 2006, how much would you have to pay in 2020 to buy the same stuff? Total inflation from 2006 to 2020 is 27.24%. So if you had $100 in 2006, today you'd have to spend $127.74. Likewise, in 2010, there has been 17.6% inflation since 2010, which means that your $100, you would have to have $117.60. That was further, I guess, another proof statement is from the American Institute for Economic Research. They have a cost of living calculator. And the cost of living calculator in 2006, $100, 2020, $127.73. So they're not exactly cent per cent, but, and then also in 2010, $100, you'd have to have $118.09. I simply share that so that folks understand why we're doing what we're doing. I don't think anybody enjoys paying taxes, but as Mr. Ken Kime said in our special meeting, for about the cost of a large pizza, we are going to ensure that our police and fire departments are funded and that we don't have any disruption in our service. If we look at this erosion of carryover here, this is, yeah, okay. Can you see it in the back? Okay.
Can't see it up yet.
In 2020, this shows that the carryover for fire is going to dwindle to $8.1 million, and the carryover for police is going to dwindle to $7.1 million. And this is a chart that shows what happens when we do the 2% on both the fire and police levy. It gives us another 5 years. It gives us the carryover we need. Looking at this and the fact that in 2020 our carryover is going to dwindle to $7.1 million, if as a township the police department either cut 20% of their personnel or did a 20% across the board salary cut, it would not essentially change the fact that we need to put this on the ballot this year and let the people decide. When I did the calculation, in 2020, 78% of the budget is for personnel. That equates to about $11,122,000. If we cut that by 20%, that'd be about $9 million. That would raise this 2020 number from $7.1 million to $9 million. It doesn't effectively extend the current levy. And this is part of the justification, and the same thing with fire. Fire is 76% personnel cost in 2020, which is roughly equal to about $11 million. So it makes sense to do this. I will say this, and this is just a, this is my opinion. I believe that in the last decade, policing has gotten more difficult because of total lack of respect for the men and women in blue. And I honestly don't know why anybody would want to be a police officer at this point. You guys are running towards the problem, I'm running away from the problem. Same thing with fire. You guys run towards the problem, I'm running away from it. And I'm calling 911 while I'm running. I think that that we're going to see a supply and demand issue in the police force. Our police department is paid in the top 50%, but we are by no means at the top of the pay scale. but we pay our police officers well in order to attract the best, the brightest, the most heroic here in Westchester. And I'm proud to be able to say that. So when you look at all the numbers about what our police officer paid and all that, we're not at the top for townships. We're not at the top, but we are in the top 50 percentile. This levy is important in order to attract and to retain not only great new police officers, but also great new fire personnel. And I want to thank you guys for, doing everything you guys do. And staff, thank you for getting all the numbers together for me. Ken, thank you so much. And that's my position on it.
Thank you, Mark. That's very well said. A good analogy. Police, we are way overdue to update our levy. And I think since I've been here, this is the first one. Or when I first came in, there was one. And we had stretched it almost double. 5-year levy almost double it. So that shows our fiscal responsibility. And our police department, today they call for services even more. Almost 50,000 call for service, another 7,000 for fire EMT. So to maintain this quality of service, we have to keep it up. And it is just a responsible way of doing it. And like Mark said, that with the inflation, this is still a very reasonable levy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think all three of us have really taken a strong stand to have an expectation of fiscal responsibility with our citizens' money. And when we looked at all the facts, all the data over the years, the trajectory of our where we were going with our levy content, we had to make a decision, and this is the right decision to make. It's a difficult time to make it with COVID hitting a lot of people, with the disruption in the police department, with all the things that are happening in our country. But it's important for us as a community to say, we value our emergency services. We want to keep them strong and healthy. And I think this would be a nice way for us to show that this is something that we value in our community. But we need it financially, but I think it's also a great way to show what our community values. So, did you want to give a little bit on the numbers?
Actually, I wanted to point out the fact that both of these levies that you're considering tonight contribute to the 911 center as well.
Okay.
So we talk about when we call for 911, you get someone from Westchester on the phone. And that means a lot to people. So I just wanted to just remind everyone of that as well.
Like that. So what would it look like for a resident voting for this if it passes in November? What would it be to their pocketbook?
For a $200,000 home, it's $180 a year. So that's $23.34 per month, which is the even on a $240,000 home at $28 a month. That's the large pizza Ken was talking about. I know as well because I've bought my fair share of large pizzas. It's a good investment in your community. We have to maintain services, and it's also a difficult decision for directors to even ask at this time, but they know that it's essential for the essential services that we provide.
Very good. Anything else?
Yeah, just to reiterate, these resolutions are so that we can begin the process to put it on the ballot. It's the residents of Westchester that are going to make the decision whether or not they value the services that they get from our police and fire departments.
We've looked at it, we've analyzed it, and we think it's due,
Yep.
but it's up to the residents whether or not they approve
That's
it.
right.
Absolutely. Anything else? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
So now we will vote on, let's see, statutory resolution 16-2020. I'll entertain a motion for that statutory resolution.
I so move.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Yeah. Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes. Mr. Brooks, business item 7 is from Community Development.
Yes, motion to approve amendment to the agreement between Westchester Township Board of Trustees and McBride Dell Clarion to incorporate property maintenance language in the updated zoning resolution. Total agreement not to exceed $125,000. And if I'm not mistaken, the additional work that we've asked them to do that's being added to this is not to exceed $15,000. So what is, everyone is maybe aware, or I'll remind you that we're working on the zoning code resolution and updating to it. And the trustees and staff saw a need to add the zoning, the zoning code and nuisance abatement and building codes and things of that nature to this. So that's what this will do.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion to approve item 7.
So move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? When is the next meeting for
That's a
McBride
good
Clarion?
question.
Is it July? Oh, sorry. Hey, Aaron. I'm sorry, Bruce.
I got a mask. There's not one scheduled. We
Oh,
had it
okay.
scheduled for April, but with not having in-person meetings, we are waiting to get a safe period to have it. So nothing's scheduled right now.
Fair enough.
But we will. We'll have public meetings.
Yeah. And this would give the residents an opportunity to provide input into our zoning code and things we'd like to see
Absolutely.
changed.
Yeah, the first meeting we had 40 attendees, and we got good feedback. And we certainly, the contract calls for a minimum of 4 public meetings. So between now and the end of the year, we'll have a lot of opportunities for residents.
Very good. Thank you, Aaron.
Aaron, you may want to sit tight there, but I mean, the next item, I think I want you
I'll
to
stay
say a
right
few
here.
words.
Very good. Thank you very much. Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Business item 8 is also community development.
Yes, motion to approve an extension of a temporary waiver of the Westchester Township zoning application fees for specified residential permits through December 31st, 2020. These are accessory structures for residential, fences, decks, pools, addition and alterations, and home occupations, all for residentials. I think Aaron, while he's standing, he can give us a rundown of the reception of this temporary waiver.
Yeah, so I want to thank the trustees for lowering the bureaucracy and the cost for residents of Westchester to complete their projects. We have seen a surge of applications for these types of, whether that's due to being home a lot or waived fees. We have certainly heard a lot of good comments back from waiving. They're minor fees. All told, really we recoup by having them come in and get their permits with a low, no-fee application. We ensure that it's done properly, which saves us a lot of money on the back end trying to track down projects that have not been done properly and not gotten proper permits. So this encouragement of coming in, waiving of the fees, actually, I believe, saves the township significant money in the long run by getting things done up front instead of chasing them at the end.
Very cool.
And it's been well received, and I thank you for considering this again.
And the extension is so we can work with the trustees and the community on getting feedback about whether or not we should make this a permanent solution, a permanent proposal within the zoning codes, because the actual impact is what, $2,600, and that can be made up elsewhere if we need to, with a modest increase in things that we're looking at already. So that's I think something that we would like to also consider later on.
I just want to make clear to the residents that might be watching, we've eliminated 8 fees that were on our fee schedule for zoning permits, taking that down to, we now only have 5 different fees for structures, and they're almost all commercial. The only residential fees we have remaining are for new houses, which are significantly more than a fence or a shed. But otherwise, if you want to make improvements in Westchester, it's easy, it's cheaper, and it's less bureaucratic than it's ever been, and I thank you for that consideration.
Aaron, a quick question. How long is a permit good for?
So under our current code, our permits never expire, which is something we're certainly looking to address with our update. Not that we want to cut people off, but what's happened, and we have had instances where people have come in literally 10 years after getting their permit and finished their project. Our codes have changed a lot over that time, but the permit still holds. We are looking at putting some type of deadline. The county uses 1 year. Through our zoning resolution process, I believe we'll end up a little more than that, but having some kind of cutoff that would make our processes much easier.
Thank you.
So now we waive the fee, so there is really no excuse for not getting a permit. Huh?
Well, that's exactly the point of what we're doing here is, and we've had people call in and say, hey, I didn't get a fence permit and I got my fence up already. And we say, hey, now's a great, until June 26th, you know, we told them, now's a really good time to come in and get that taken care of because there's no fee, and they love hearing that. We don't do penalties in Westchester. Our goal is to make sure that the structures are done safely and correctly, not to collect $25.
Well, this is also for public good as well. If you say want to set up a tiki bar, get a permit. Otherwise, your neighbor later on is going to complain that, hey, you didn't have a permit. Who authorized that? So
Absolutely.
we get all the I dotted T cross, make sure meet the standard, the zoning code. So it is just smart to get a permit.
Absolutely.
If it is how close it is to the fence line or lights and all that.
The more people do it correctly at the
That's
front
right.
when it's all on paper, the cheaper it is for them, the cheaper it is for us.
Later on,
And-
all the squabbles. Yeah.
And if they don't get a permit and we find out about it, or there is a complaint or a dispute, we have a little more leverage through the court system because there's no excuse not to get
That's
it.
right. So that makes sense.
Very fair.
Thank you.
Well done, Aaron.
Thanks,
Thank
Aaron.
you.
Thanks, Aaron.
I'll entertain a motion to approve item 8.
So move.
A second?
I have a motion and a second, and we did our discussion already. Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Yeah, Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
And Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Let's see, Mr. Burks, item 9 is for fire.
Item 9 for fire. Yes, motion to approve statutory resolution number 17-2020 authorizing the acquisition of certain real property located adjacent to Fire Station 73 from Capitol Square Condominium Owners Association and the execution of land purchase agreement in connection therewith. The fire department has negotiated for the potential sale of the wedge property behind Fire Station 73 for the last several months. The township contracted with Beck Consulting to have the wedge property assessed. The wedge property is 9,310 square feet and .2173 acres. The value of the property was determined to be $18,600. Additional space that will increase the size of our lot can be utilized for parking and extra space for fire training. The condo association will sell the property for the appraised price, and Frost Brown Todd has initiated a purchase agreement that has been working with the condo association attorneys to reach an agreement. A survey of the property is pending this agreement and will be completed in the very near future.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion to approve statutory resolution number 17-2020.
I so move.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Getting it done.
Yep.
Getting it finished, finally.
This is a no-brainer.
Yep. Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes. We don't have any first readings of resolutions tonight, so we are coming up to our second citizens' comments portion. Any Westchester resident, property owner, or business owner that would like to approach the board with comments or concerns, you're invited to do so. We ask that you only approach once. If you have any questions for the board or for staff, we will hear them now and address them during our discussion period. We don't go back and forth during this period. A reminder to give your name and address for the record after you approach the lectern. Is there any citizens, residents?
On township business.
Yeah, regarding township business. Yeah, please approach. Just give your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Dr. Richard E. Knodel Jr., and I live at 7515 Dover Drive, Westchester, which is just on the other side of 75, on the east side of 75, near Tylersville Road. And I came to speak regarding, I understand I have, my knowledge of this is limited, but at this point, but I've heard that you're trying to get a historical signs or something put up along Sunday Road, and that then there's a need to finance that, which involves some taxation. I presume it's pretty minor, but at the same time, the issue has arisen that you're leaning in the direction of taxing the churches along the route too, and it's at that point that I would come and try to speak against that. Well, not try, but I will speak against that. And let me read a passage of scripture first. Are we limited to 2 minutes at this point? Okay. I'll read just a short passage of scripture from Acts 5, where the early Christian church was dealing with the Roman government, Imperial Rome, as well as the Sanhedrin on more local issues that were made up of the Jewish politicians of the day. And the apostles were brought before the council. At one point, they'd been arrested once, and they had been released, and they were commanded, they were strictly commanded not to teach in the name of Jesus Christ. And they say, now look, you have filled Jerusalem with your doctrine and intend to bring this man's blood on us. But Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men. The God of our fathers raised up Jesus, whom you murdered by hanging on a tree. Him God exalted to his right hand, to be Prince and Savior, to give repentance to Israel and forgiveness of sins. And we are his witnesses of these things, and so is the Holy Spirit, whom God has given to those who obey him. Now here's Peter speaking before Imperial Rome, and they could have cared less about the Holy Spirit. They could have cared. They had no real respect for the traditions of Israel or anything like that. But Peter brings up this principle that there was God's domain and there was man's domain. There was the kingdom of God. There was the kingdom of man. And so at this point, he calls upon, he says that they have given him a command, but he's arguing that it's illegitimate. This is because the command was to deny them the right to speak in the name of the Lord. Well, there are two issues here. One is the autonomy of the believer to speak or to represent God however he would. And then there's the issue of the autonomy of the church. And in Western tradition, I'm sorry these things are no longer taught in our public schools and that sort of thing, but in Western tradition, the idea is that the church has its area of autonomy, and then the state has its area of autonomy, and they're not supposed to encroach on each other. In the Middle Ages, the Roman Church encroached way into the area of the civil state. And then in modern times, as we've had the growth of the imperial state, the state has encroached more and more in the area of the church. This relates, I haven't got time to really, and you're not, this is not a Sunday school class or something like that, but this relates to the lordship of Jesus Christ. Well, we use that phrase, but over what is he Lord? Well, he's Lord of the church of Jesus Christ. And in this case, it's interesting to note that Peter is speaking to
Sir, do you mind, with all due respect,
Yeah,
When you get to the point, please don't, this is, if you want to pontificate, we can do it elsewhere.
no, I'm just trying to explain why this tax is a major issue.
Well, let's get to the point. Yes.
In the 1200s, this is 800 years ago, King John of England had the same idea that he was going to tax the church. It basically caused a revolt, and it was out of that revolt that the Magna Carta came. And you notice the very first, now you probably don't know this, but the very first article of the Magna Carta, this is the great, in Latin, it's the great code or the great letter, the great writing, the great tract. The very first article demands freedom from the church, freedom for the church from all taxation. So now this was the case before the era of the Magna Carta. The separation of church and state, the freedom of the church from the state. King John encroached upon what was the common tradition. The church and the state, or the people, the citizens, broke back against King John. And the Magna Carta is one of the most famous legal documents in Western history. So we have testimony to the independence of the church from the state. When you say that you can tax the church, I don't care whether it's 5 cents or $500 or $5 million. When the state, here you represent the state in some form, when you say that you can tax the state, it's a very big issue. You may not see it tonight, but it's a huge issue. And I'm definitely going to make this a cause célèbre in my life and for the life. If this goes forward, I just want to tell you now that I will make this a huge issue as far as I can make it, and because I don't think that probably the council here, the trustees, realize how big an issue this is in terms of legal precedent. But we won't have any trouble at all bringing in attorneys to argue this, and already in our law we have all kinds of deferences to the church based upon this. Now, with the secularization of modern society, there are encroachments like this that are occurring. But I would argue that you realize right away this is a really big thing, and it comes to us not on the authority of men, but it comes to us on the authority of God himself.
Sorry.
Pardon?
Nothing. My phone.
And I'd raise the issue, is anything sacred in your lives? I'm not asking you to answer that, but is anything sacred? Right now, in America, we're having a crisis because of bodies like this, you sit and you have a certain assumed nobility and a certain honor. But right now, everything is being challenged. We're having people coming into the middle of our cities, not just the middle of a meeting like this, but in the middle of our cities, and claiming a part of that city. You need to, as trustees, you need to consider, what is the honor by which I sit? What is the authority by which I sit? Because you can have people that come in, they're not elected, and they can take over this meeting. And, they could, and I don't know the chief, I don't know if Chief Herzog here would be able to put down such a rebellion like that, but ultimately our protection your protection is that there is a hierarchy of values that goes all the way up to God. And if God is God and he has majesty and a nobility, then Romans 13 says that you have that. But if you are not willing to grant him that, then your own authority can come and really be challenged. And there are all kinds of secular politicians that are now backpedaling right now in America. They don't know how to handle this. I mean, because everybody to this point has respected the way things have gone. They've respected the offices. They've respected the statutes and the rule of law. But now all of that is being questioned. Our public schools are not helping in this regard because they're not teaching anything about this hierarchy of values. And so everything's up for grabs. This is just one small way in which we need to relearn, retool, and I think not pushing a tax on the church at this point would be a good way to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dick.
Thank you, Dick.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? Please give us your name and address for the record.
Jeremiah York, 9515 Woodland Hills Drive, Westchester. I've also come to speak in opposition of taxing the churches for the Cincinnati-Dayton maintenance project. I wanted to read a few paragraphs out of my Founder's Bible from signature historian David Barton as it pertains specifically to this issue. The power to tax involves the power to destroy. Ezra 7:24. For centuries in America, churches, places of worship, and religious ministries have been free from government-imposed taxes, reflecting the policy described in Ezra 7:24. Quote, "We also inform you that it is not allowed to impose tax, tribute, or toll on any of the priests, Levites, singers, doorkeepers, Nethinim, or servants of this house of God," unquote. But as secularism began to militantly assert itself in the modern era by attacking every vestige of public religious recognition, the tax-exempt status of churches became a target. When one such case reached the U.S. Supreme Court, it voted overwhelmingly to retain the exemption because churches had enjoyed, quote, 2 centuries of uninterrupted freedom from taxation, unquote. And at both the federal and state levels, the practice was deeply embedded in the fabric of our national life, the court explained. All of the 50 states provide for tax exemption of places of worship, most of them doing so by constitutional guarantees. For so long as federal income taxes have had any potential impact on churches, over 75 years, the time since the federal progressive income tax was originated, religious organizations have been expressly exempt from the federal tax. Few concepts are more deeply embedded in the fabric of our national life, beginning with pre-revolutionary colonial times. The principle behind why the government is not allowed to tax churches was articulated by founding father John Marshall, a Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, who declared, "The power to tax involves the power to destroy." If government can tax a church, even if it is just a little tax, it has opened the door whereby it can exercise a power that ultimately can be used to eradicate that church. As founding father John Dickinson explained, if they have a right to levy a tax of 1 penny upon us, they have a right to levy 1,000,000 upon us, for where does their right stop? If they have any right to tax us, then whether our own money shall continue in our own pockets or not depends no longer on us, but on them. In 1874, the Supreme Court pointed out historical instances in which the power of taxation had been used to completely eliminate specific industries, including that of competitive state banking, noting, "The power to tax is therefore the strongest, the most pervading of all the powers of government, reaching directly or indirectly to all classes of the people. It was said by Chief Justice Marshall in the case of McCulloch v. State of Maryland that the power to tax is the power to destroy. A striking instance of the truth of the proposition is seen in the fact that the existing tax of 10% imposed by the United States on the circulation of all other banks than the national banks drove out of existence every state bank of circulation within a year or two after its passage. If the government is ever allowed to tax churches, even for just 1 penny, it has initiated a power that can control and thus destroy them. Hence, the wisdom of following the policy set forth in Ezra 7:24 is established, another of the many American constitutional practices with biblical precedent." Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Anyone else would like to approach the board this evening? Seeing none, I will close our citizens' comments portion of this meeting. We do have 2 second readings this evening, both zoning map amendments. Item 10 is a second reading of number 13-2020, approving a zoning map amendment from B1 to B2 for case ZMA 02-2020, the Giza property Do we need to read that? No. I'll entertain a motion to approve zoning resolution number 13-2020.
Also move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No. Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Yeah, Mr. Welch,
Yes.
Mrs. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Wong,
Yes.
The second zoning resolution we have this evening is concerning the Casanelli property. We are going to do something a little bit unusual this evening. We are going to reopen the public hearing for ZMA 03-2020. Can I have a motion to reopen the public hearing?
I so move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mrs. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Welch,
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to continue the second reading of this zoning resolution till our July 28th meeting of the Westchester Board of Trustees.
Also move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Welch,
Yes.
Mrs. Becker,
Yes. So this will be addressed, the second reading will be addressed at our July 28th meeting. So I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Also move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Mr. Welch,
Yes.
Mrs. Becker,
Yes.
and Mr. Wong.
Yes.
So that brings us to our discussion items and elected official comments. Do you have anything for us tonight, Larry?
Yes, I just want to remind people that we are sending out aggregation letters to those folks that are new accounts. So we're getting some calls in, just to let them know that if they do not want to be part of the township's aggregation, they can opt out. And also, we have continued moving forward with the Cincinnati-Dayton Road Landscape Improvement District with all of the properties involved this time, so everyone should be getting a letter.
Very good. Mr. Jones, do you have anything this evening?
I have no comments, but thank you.
Wonderful. Mr. Welch?
Yeah, I guess I'll address Dick and Jeremiah's, I guess, concern. You know, these churches, they are foundational to our community, and they are residents and citizens just like the rest of us on Cincinnati-Dayton Road. And, you know, for me to say that churches don't pay any taxes, I mean, I just don't get that, because they pay payroll tax, they pay workers' compensation, they pay unemployment tax. I guess they don't pay property tax, and I guess with the 501c3 designation, they may not pay federal taxes or state. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. But I would think that a church, being a part of the community and being a cornerstone to the community, would want the community to be better. I mean, we're in Westchester. I mean, there might be churches in other areas of the state that would love to be in Westchester, but don't. Maybe they can't afford the land or the property or the building or whatever. But we have these great churches on Cincinnati-Dayton Road in Old Westchester. And I would think that they would be delighted to be a part of the community, just like every business and every resident that lives on Cincinnati-Dayton Road. And I think it's a very simple, in fact, I know it's already taken care of at St. John. I have Tim Poff, who owns the properties just south of the Boys and Girls Club, has already stepped up and he says, well, I will. He said, I go to St. John. I'll just go ahead and pay that for them. And that's how I see this kind of rolling, that somebody who goes to those churches, whether it's New Life or the Presbyterian or St. John, is going to say, well, hey, no big deal. I'm going to increase my gift to you guys, and I want this to be designated to go there. So to me, it's a simple solution. I think there'll be plenty of people that are willing to step up. There are benefits for this. Apparently, the mailboxes cost $250 a piece. You know, it's not totally clear as to what all that this fund would go to, but you know what? Let's face it. When the township puts a sidewalk in front of your place of business, guess who's responsible for the maintenance down the road? Could be that this fund that we're all contributing to would go towards the replacement of the sidewalk. It could go
Road improvement.
Possibly, but that, I'd leave that on the back of the township. You know, that's a big, but it could be some kind of a, you know, some kind of a gateway to either side that you could put in. It might be landscaping that would go in.
This is a part of beautification.
It's part of the beautification.
Yeah, they all benefit.
And it's part of the keeping it sort of standardized, if you will, in the look, because quite frankly, there may be people that with their $250 mailbox gets knocked down, and they can't go to somebody else's insurance company to collect it, that they're going to put up any old mailbox. And we've all seen that, you know, Lee. We live in Beckett Ridge, and all those mailboxes are, you know, consistent and the same, and it adds to the, you know, to the beauty of the neighborhood. So.
And the
That's
first
right.
one was paid for by
And
the
it is
county.
very minimal.
Right,
And,
right. I have two
okay.
properties on Cincinnati Dayton, would love to have more,
Right.
but, you know, I'm gonna be paying this tax, and I'm glad to do it. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, because there is a standard they want to maintain in Old Westchester. Otherwise, somebody put a trash can out there to collect mail, put a box on top. So they collectively all chip in that if there's any damage or beautification, they would all benefit
Yeah.
this way in a bank for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I just want to make a clarification, if you don't mind. This is an assessment. It's not a tax. Now, for some people, that may be splitting hairs, but taxes are toward your valuation. This is to fulfill an estimate for maintenance cost. And so taxes are assessed based on valuation. This is based on an estimated cost of $4,000 per year, and to create a fund for maintenance and repairs. So that assessment is allowed by Ohio Revised Code, and it's up to the communities whether they do or do not want to take advantage of it. And in this case, we are. So.
Yeah, and in fact, you know, we have a lighting district. I'm not sure, you know, how that, yeah, it's basically the same. The cost of purchasing the lamps, the poles was on the Westchester's back. But the cost of the electricity and replacement is on the back of the folks in the lighting district. And I forget what that is. It's next to nothing. I'm not,
very minimal.
Do St. John's pay into the lighting district? Yeah.
Because I would love to have my street have lights. You only pay about $3 a month for electric
yeah.
street
Yeah.
lights.
So this is not the first go-around of doing something to add to the beauty of Old Westchester and to make it another spectacular business center for Westchester.
Did you have anything else, Lee?
No.
Did you
No.
cut you off? No? I only had one other thing. Our first concert series is Thursday, July 2nd
Really?
at 6 p.m. at the Square, Takeover.
What, really?
Yeah, kick off 4th of July early. We have 90 proof twang, so bring your social distance circle and have fun. I'm excited. Very good. We do have, anything else? No? We do have executive session
Yes.
this evening. So I'll entertain a motion to recess our regular meeting and go into executive session for the purpose of conferencing with our attorney concerning public employees and considering confidential info related to economic development.
Also move?
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Yeah, Mrs. Becker,
Yes,
Mr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
we are in recess. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn executive session and resume our June 23rd, 2020 regular meeting.
So move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Just a reminder to everyone, this is our last online meeting, and I want to thank our PI team to helping us out with our audio-visual presentation for the past, gosh golly, 3 months? So
Wow.
I appreciate that very much. Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Yeah, Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes. We have concluded all tonight's business and action items, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the June 23rd regular meeting of the Westchester Board of Trustees.
I so move.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Jones, roll call, please.
Yeah, Mr. Welch?
Yes.
Mrs. Becker?
Yes,
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
we stand adjourned.